Kendal is a mid-sized ship that travels from Felixstowe, a port in England, to the port of Le Havre in France. Then the ship goes down to the Suez Canal to Salaha. Then it goes to Sri Lanka, then into the Straits of Malacca to stop at port of Kelang in Malaysia. Then it reaches Singapore before the final destination of Melayu Chambak is reached in Thailand, where the ship turns around and comes back. Kendal is capable to carry 6,188 20-foot equivalent units. All these 20-foot equivalent units are lifted by a crane in the port and later placed into the ship. We can find the major larger container ships in Kendal, like Mars, Evergreen, Engine, TMA, CGM, and Hapag Lloyd, which carry thousands of usual items as well as the less expected ones such as weapons and scrap metal. In Kendal's crew, we can find Filipino workers. Filipino workers are experienced workers, and they offer a cheap hand labor as well as Chinese and Indians. Kendal's captain, Captain Glenn, has to deal with paperwork all the time. Beyond of controlling the ship by paying attention that they are going the right way or that they could collide with a crushing object in the middle of the sea, the captain has to pay attention to what enters and what leaves the ship at every stop they make in every port. The implementation of containerization has made the paperwork check process easier. In the past, goods were transported into wooden boxes or canal barges, which required a lot of workload, making the transportation process takes longer. Thanks to Malcolm McLean, the idea of containerization came out, making goods get into boxes, understood by containers, to later fix them in trains, trucks, cranes, and ships. Containerization also started to guarantee the security of goods, making people who handle it difficult to see what was inside. Seafaring life is an attractive career opportunity, offering to manage multi-million-dollar assets and earn accordingly as well as tax-free time. At the same time, these jobs require a lot of physical effort by sacrificing a lot of sleep and time with family to avoid the less risk possible to guarantee that the cargo shipments will arrive at its final destination safely. The shipping industry has excessively good and bad times. When the business runs well, new shipments are built, rental rates are high, and demand constantly increases. During hard times, recession and crisis tremendously affect the shipping business, making it lose thousands of millions of dollars. At the same time, forcing huge transnational shipping companies to negotiate long-term parking contracts for the navies due to the economic uncertainty that stopped the business operations. Shipwreck is something that is not wished by any sailor. The International Union of Marine Insurance has received claims for compensation of lost ships, and nowadays the approximate amount of lost ships is 2 per week. Kendal's crew like to socialize and share stories about sailing life, and one of the stories was about Danny F2, which was a shipment that sailed from the Rwandan capital, Montevideo, to Middle East, carrying cattle and sheep. Carrying such a number of living animals represented that 1,683 sheep and 6 cattle died during a sea voyage on average. Getting from Montevideo to Lebanon took 3 weeks with no land call. With too much weight carried during one trip to Lebanon caused that the ship sank. The stage of the manure, the movement of the animals, and the waste were some of the reasons to overcome the ship. This happened in 2009, and Danny F II became the 13th seventh ship to sink that year. Kendall has just left Europe and is approaching the Suez Canal by the Mediterranean Sea. The canal connects the Mediterranean Sea and the Red Sea by passing through the heart of Egypt. The crew in one of his dinners start talking about the risk area near the Suez Canal. In such dangerous area, piracy started in 2004, and any authority has been able to control or reduce it until now. Pirates have numerous ways to attack. For example, they connect to Channel 16 to confuse the captains by sending strange sounds or saying whatever word repeatedly. An invisible concern respecting to the shipping industry is the pollution it causes. It is invisible because the public opinion thinks that cars and airplanes are the main means of transport that contaminate the most, when in reality they are not. Bunker fuel is the main responsible one for emissions affecting the atmosphere. For that reason, many organizations have rise to control the shipping emissions problem and force the whole shipping industry to effectively use fuel, which will help the environment. This action will also benefit the shipping industry by cutting cost of fuel expenses. The ship needs to pass through the International Recommended Transit Corridor (IRTC). Such area will be surrounded by military ships that will protect the Kendall from piracy. The International Recommended Transit Corridor is a high-risk area. It is also a route of 70% of global oil traffic and 50% of container ship traffic. Kendall doesn't count with any security or weapon available to protect them from piracy attacks, because Maersk doesn't allow to have any armament in the ship. The only resource for protection is aleatory pirate watch by the crew. And another hope is that the United States has involved in the Gulf of Aden security. The United States protects merchant vessels that pass through with warships. Because of the political, social, economical instability of Somalia, most of the pirates are Somali. The reason behind the assault and kidnap merchant shipments might be that they need supplies for their communities to survive. At the same time, supplies from merchant vessels can be used to supply the Somali civil war with weapons, ammunition, and food. Pirate business is kidnapping and ransom. They establish the time that will keep the crew captured. At the same time, pirates establish their own ransom rates according to the region where the ship comes from. Many people understand that the solution to piracy is not facing them on sea. The problem must be solved on land by fixing Somalians, even though it represents a difficult situation because who can turn Somalia to formally formed country? In order to prevent pirates attacks, 2/3 of ships are carrying armed guards, advertising their armed guests in their AIS. Instead of reading the ship destination, pirates will see a sign saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 armed guards on board. Carrying armed guards is a warranty that the ship won't be hijacked. Arriving to the Salaha port is a complete relief for Kendall's crew. Being at the place is one of the most delightful moments for sailors. During their stay at the Salaha port, the crew can do several activities, like mainly resting and relaxing, having a fresh meal, and walk 100 miles around the port. Some members of the crew do not have the opportunity to travel far from home. For that reason, stopping at many different ports gives them the opportunity to discover the world. In the case of Filipinos, they are great buyers of souvenirs that take home for their families. Under the International Labour Organization, seafarers get into a special category of special workers. No one else might feel what a seafarer suffers when working. These workers spend more time of his time on sea, being isolated for a long time without seeing their relatives and friends. At the same time, being a seafarer requires a lot of physical effort to attain the duties of the merchant vessel. The ship is approaching the Straits of Gibraltar near Sri Lanka, where the ship must run 14 knots so it won't run over whales or dolphins. That is considered the maximum speed to allow animals to get out of the way. At sea, whales are washed, battered, hashed, paned, and stuck. The true scale of trauma is to know, like much else about whales. The size of big ships like Kendall can hit animals, loose boxes, or yachts and not notice it. Modern ships, like the size of Kendall, are a problem for animals because they run on machinery that produces noise and vibration above the water but also beneath it. The movement of propellers in water produces something known as cavation, a constant creation of tiny bubbles that constantly The International Convention for the Safety of Life at Sea, SOLAS, is plain in its Regulation 33, stress situations. The master of a ship at sea which is in position to provide assistance or receiving information from any source that people are in stress at sea is bound to proceed with all speed to their assistance. This obligation to provide assistance applies regardless of the nationality or status of such people or the circumstances in which they are found. Kendall has arrived to the Malacca Straits. The straits are 500 miles long, join the Indian and Pacific Oceans, and are surrounded by places of spice and treasure. Here, there are also piracy, but since 2004, the littoral governments of the Straits, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, and Thailand began monitoring serious piracy patrols using air, sea, and intelligence. After the Malacca Straits, the ship will reach the final destination in Singapore to disembark. To disembark, cranes have to unload Kendall's empty boxes to be exchanged for filled ones. After thousands of moves, boxes taken, boxes put back, and at the end of it, Kendall will look exactly the same to return. "90% of Everything" is a good book that I really enjoy to read. It shows the reality of sailing life and the real risk that it takes to move goods from one place to another. Something that I didn't like about the book is that it doesn't show the whole process of the logistic and management. At the same time, I would like to know how manufacturers and warehouses pack and label the products destined to the port, and how it reaches its final destination and its final customer. In addition, I would like to know if the ship offers additional service like custom clearance. Countries want to build and enhance their infrastructure to enhance their international commerce to sell their products overseas.